Okay, good morning. Thank you so much for investing your time with us on a Saturday morning. My name is Camelia. I'm the moderator of today's Fireside session. Just a brief background of myself. I'm the founder of Kabel, a Tinder for jobs, and I founded this to help leaders connect to their future hires through a purpose, vision, and mission, which leads to our Fireside chat today about leading teams in the digital era. We'll cover some of the practices that we need to keep our eyes on so that we could directly, so we could directly impact our business with our amazing guest speakers today. So before we get started and diving into our two amazing guest speakers today, I want to just take a temperature of the room. Here's a simple poll for you. Let us know if you are a corporate business leader or you are a business owner yourself, or you may be a HR practitioner. How many of you actually are new in or entering into a leadership space at the moment? So can we just have a poll? Great. Awesome. Keep the poll coming. Great, awesome. Thank you so much. I guess we have quite a few HR practitioners here. So welcome on board, everybody, and thank you so much again for investing time into this leadership session that we are hosting today. And go ahead, say hi, introduce yourself by typing in the comment box below. Say hi to the participants, don't be shy. Right, so our goal here is to build awareness on the importance of leadership in building high performance business through their best asset, which are people, as we know. So let me just draw this back to the beginning of this week. I did do a short poll on my LinkedIn about what is your main challenge when working remotely on a digital platform. So here's some of the results that I'd like to share. 47% of them saying that it's difficult to separate work and personal life. And 18% of them saying that there's a lack of collaboration or communication while they're working remotely. 16% feels that they are disconnected and lonely. And 19% of them actually says that it's difficult for them to actually stay motivated. We'll discuss some of the tips today to address these challenges. Hope that by the end of this session, you'll be able to walk away with something, a new idea, a fresh perspective, or a new strategy that you can apply to be more successful in your role as a leader. So here's the format, right? Just to give you an idea of what to expect out of this session. We'll take a few moments for each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about their background in the industry. I'll then kick off the conversation by asking questions that will draw you to some of the high-level practices that we should be thinking about. And then, if you have basically any questions, just leave a comment on the Q&A section anytime. So during the second half of the day, we'll open up the floor for some answers to your questions. And if you do spot a good question, just press like so that we know which are the popular questions to address to. And we'll just go along with that mode. Sounds good? Okay, so great. Let's just start with our guest speaker introduction. So here we have Viren. Viren, thank you for your time. Viren is the CEO of TUI Group for APAC and ME. TUI is actually a world's leading tourism group and a listed company in the London Stock Exchange. He also founded Catch That Bus, an online platform that aims to drive a superior experience in a bus travel through the perfect mix of technology and operation innovation. Viren's passion lies in harnessing the power of technology to deliver the best user experience in tourism and transportation. And say hi to Cheryl Tay. Cheryl is our Vice President of Human Resources for Imagine Group, a creative ecosystem that uses AI to enable the world to design smarter, faster, and easier like never before. So Cheryl is passionate in nurturing talents and transforming the workforce to meet strategic business objectives. Cheryl has vast experience in analyzing talent gaps, designing and transformation roadmap, and driving changes to increase effectiveness of an organization. I've personally worked with these two leaders in their current and also their previous organizations, and I find them very, a subject matter expert in this space, and hence that's why they have actually agreed to participate in this and sharing their knowledge to you guys. So let's get started. Viren, thanks again for sparing time. You come from the tourism industry, and I believe it's especially challenging for tourism during this past 1 year, right? But I'm quite sure that you have some strategy in mind. So mind sharing with us, Viren, why TUI decided to have a team in this part of the world, and what is the direction moving forward to ensure that the company's success in your space?
Hi, good morning, Camelia, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me on this webinar. I don't know if I'm a subject matter expert, but I will try and answer questions that you have. I think it was a strategic decision that TUI made. So traditionally, I guess not many people know about TUI, but they are, as what you said, the largest travel operator in the world. They have about 400, they manage a fleet of 100 planes, 400 hotels, and they have a number of cruise ships running across Europe. So their primary focus has always been Europe, but I believe sometime in 2018, there was a shift. And so as you can see, it's a very traditional travel business. They had, thousands of retail outlets. And I believe in 2018, kind of a realization happened that, hey, that this business is at risk. It's operationally very heavy, and anything like, I don't think they expected COVID to happen, but sometime in 2018, they felt that they needed to drive some form of digital transformation. So that's where this division that we call Future Markets came to be. And by coincidence, they had people formerly from TUI who had moved on to different airlines, different businesses in the travel space. So I think in one of those many conversations, they realized the opportunities to work with airline partners, and that's the division that I manage, which is Airline Acceleration. And so one of the airlines that we work with is Malaysia Airlines. And I think they wanted to expand into the Asia Pacific region, or Southeast Asia rather, and they were deciding between a few different locations: Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. Language was, of course, a key requirement. Cost was another issue. So Malaysia obviously became the most obvious selection for them. And then Malaysia Airlines came to be, and automatically that just made their decision that much easier. So essentially, I think the business itself, we realized that in the airline business, it's fairly challenging. Margins are really, really low for a per seat basis. So for airlines, how do they increase revenue on a per passenger basis? And I think the offering that TUI came with was very interesting for the airlines. So the second airline we have is actually Qatar Airways. So there are two airlines right now. So it's still a very young and growing entity in kind of the larger scope of TUI. But yeah, the airlines realized, like, look, how do we now increase our margins? Just depending on selling airline seats is not enough. So that's where we come in, and we provide them with a SaaS or software as a service solution. We provide them with all the ancillary products: hotel rooms, car rentals, even sporting events. So we are working closely with them to host, provide them with access to sporting events. So customers who book through these airlines can perhaps one day, even book their tickets to Wimbledon in London, or the Roland Garros in Paris, or even in the future FIFA. So very interesting things. And in the end, I think it's all about driving revenue. And I think the airlines know that somehow or the other, they need to figure out how they can, increase their current revenues from what they've traditionally been doing. So it's kind of a shift in the way they do business. They already have the audience in place, but now how do they provide either more value add, but at the same time try and get more from the passenger itself. So that's a bit of a summary of what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Viren. You have made us miss our holidays so much.
Yes. Yes, it is. So we're all looking forward to traveling. I think, as you know, that Phuket is opening up on the 1st of July, if anyone can make it there.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Yeah. So you've entered this space at this time where you're preparing for the market to actually pick up, which is actually a good time. But
yeah.
on top of that, you have another challenge with everything going digital and remote. Can you share a little bit more about what are your challenges that you face in leading your team?
I think it has been stressful for a lot of people. I think I joined not too long ago, but overall, I think most people around the world, they've been working from home since March, February last year.
Yes.
And it still continues to be the case. I think very few, I mean, there are of course segments of people who've gone back to office, but like in our space, we've been very cautious, and TUI as an entity has made this decision that, we will only go back to office when we really see the need, right? It has been challenging. I think it's also been fairly stressful for a lot of people because, like, I think what you rightly mentioned, people are working longer hours. It is different time zones. We work with Europe, we work with the Middle East, so we are literally stretched from whatever time that anyone starts. Right? If you start at 9, it may go until 9 or 11 at night. So it then all comes to kind of some form of self-management of your timing and having to make sure that your colleagues respect that time, right? So when someone sets a calendar invite at 9 p.m. your time, you've also got to inform them like, hey, I am sitting in Malaysia. But the good thing is, I think within TUI, they're very respectful of that. I think the colleagues in Europe, especially, they understand the issue with the time difference. So they try and now do earlier meetings. So instead, they wake up or they start work at 7 or 8 a.m. Their time so that they can be on a call with us in the afternoon. So that's pretty amazing. And I really appreciate that they are cognizant of that factor of the time zone. But of course, there are going to be times when you really can't help it, especially when you have senior management meetings and you just don't have a choice and you just have to take those calls. But typically it's not too bad. It has been challenging, but I think the challenge is because of parents working from home. They have their kids running around behind them. That adds a bit more stress. So I've heard many calls I get on, I see someone's kid running behind, asking for help for their homework, which is fine. I think we all accept that, but then it adds a bit of stress to the person on the call that, hey, I need to try and figure out how to not get distracted. But yeah, I think it's part and parcel. It's just accepting it, and I think most people have accepted it. It's just then figuring out how to manage your time after work, work and not work.
Definitely. Being a parent myself, I totally get you, what you're referring to. And that leads to actually our next Saturday's Fireside Chat. If anybody of you are interested, we're actually talking about parenting to leadership and how we could actually manage this part, right? Okay. So, Viren, my next question, right? TUI as a group has been around for a long time, right? And you've probably been dealing with leaders who came from the more traditional side of the business. So in your opinion, do you see the difference on how leaders should be, leading in the digital era versus the past? And how do you integrate them with, your newer people? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You're right. Like, I think, like, for example, the clear difference we see is like the team in Malaysia is fairly young. They have this whole startup mentality because, it's just been them hustling. Essentially, it's a new entity for them. And they work like a startup. Everyone takes ownership, everyone takes accountability, everyone is responsible for their tasks. But then when you look at the older organization, you've got people who've been there for like 20, 25 years. Literally, this was their first job, and they've been around since the day they started or they graduated from university or college. So yeah, you can really see a difference in the way they do things, in the way they interact, right? Like for them, look, my role is X, Y, and Z. Anything beyond that, I'm sorry, I can't help you, right? You have those kind of scenarios. Obviously, that trend is changing only because they don't have a choice. And that's unfortunate because some of them are maybe they're so used to they're set in their ways. They've been there for the longest time ever, and for them it's like, why am I taking this additional responsibility? But then at times you really don't have the choice because that person who was handling that other responsibility may not be in the organization. Just because, as you know, I mean, travel has been greatly affected. And TUI, I think, had to slash 10,000 people in Europe. And so a lot of people who are still there have taken on additional responsibility. So unfortunate for them, they have to take it on. But yeah, I think now, if you ask me about, how we move in the digital era, it's really all about the data that you have in front of you. You really need to be driven by the data that you have. You need to be nimble. You can't wait and, hope for organic growth. And I mean, that's a traditional TUI business. For them, it's like, okay, we have hotels, we have planes, and we have our retail outlets. And during a typical summer season, they really don't, I mean, they just run their typical traditional marketing offers. But now it's about, hey, how do we spot the next opportunity? And that only can happen if you have some data to rely on. And then you need to move quick, and you move with a small team.
All right. So thanks for that. And obviously the employees or staff coming from the traditional side of the business have got their own way or their strength in this business, and likewise for the younger generation as well. So how do you cultivate both parties to actually embrace this working culture? Is there a tip that you can share on the do's and don'ts to actually encourage the right behaviors, how to marry both of them together?
I think that's a tough one to answer. I mean, the thing is, I think for that kind of the older generation, they have been in this pandemic now for a year plus, a year and a half. Obviously, things have changed dramatically for them from what they were used to doing and what they have to do now. So now it's all about a fight for survival. It's kind of the do or die type of scenario that they have been put into. It's unfortunately, if I put it crassly, it's unfortunate that they are in that situation. So of course, there is a bit of resistance to certain things, like, they may not want to accept that, hey, this is the direction we have to go in as an organization. But then it all comes from like the top, right? If your leaders are really driving this forward and they are very hands-on with, what they want to achieve and the goals and ambitions that they have, then I believe, as long as the kind of 90% or 80% of the organization buys into that vision, then automatically everyone will kind of come into the fold, and they will then start coming along and working together. So I think in terms of teamwork, that's very apparent. Like, everyone knows what's at stake. They all really go all out to make sure they do what they can. Okay. So I think that's not a question. I think it's just more about coming out of their comfort zone and doing something different. It was very traditional. It was old school offline business, and now you're going into the digital business.
Right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. So I guess what we could actually get out of this is that to constantly actually get people together, align on their vision, all right, and just basically go along with that. However,
well, I think that buy-in is important. And the only way that buy-in happens is to show that, hey, look, I'm not just, or whoever the person is, I'm not just giving you false information, right? Look, this is the data. We have it in front of us. This is the way we need to go forward. So as long as there's sufficient data points to tell you, like, look, this is the way, why we are doing this and why we need to go in this direction, then of course people then will buy. But if you're just, giving them a load of rubbish, a lot of people will not buy it, right? They will just say like, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks a lot, Viren. And coming to you, Cheryl. I mean, Cheryl, you have been, leading teams and transforming teams. I've worked with you since your Kellogg's days, FMCG. You went into education, and now you're in a, fully AI-driven, digitalized company. I mean, how do you do that? What's your experience with transforming talents, and what you see is a critical behavior to actually cultivate leaders or line managers, maybe some of them are from the traditional business, into this space? How do you as a HR support them?
For us, it's always looking at what kind of skill sets that person or that talent needs in order to support the industry or the business that you're in, right? So if you are in an industry that is not so high tech, then you need a different skill set compared to the ones that are already in digital business or going into digital business. The landscape today, if you look around, and the pandemic sort of accelerates the current business environment, is it sort of pushed everybody into this space. Even farmers have no choice today but to sell their goods, their vegetables, using online because of the pandemic. So this pandemic has caused a shift, right? And everybody is like moving towards this. So the important thing for business to know is knowing the technological impact in this era, right? So we're talking about leading teams in the digital era. So the first thing a lot of businesses need to know is, how does the technology impact us first, right? So what I can share is, we all know that with tech, it ultimately talks about speed. It's really about speed, right? The name of the game in the future or in the digital era is about speed. So it increased speed, doing it faster, doing it simpler, gives you ample opportunity to do more. So that's what digital and tech era you will see. It's faster and faster and more, and more in terms of volume of work, quantity of work, things to do, as well as greater reach and span. And now you can reach across the world with a click of a button. Now that environment that we are going to live in eventually for everyone, regardless whether you're a farmer or now you're in a tech industry, is the same. So you have to start accepting that speed becomes something that you need to manage. So number one is, what kind of skill sets you need in order to be able to manage with the kind of speed that is required of businesses. And speed influences or totally shifts your competitive landscape. Now everyone is online and everyone wants it faster, more. So innovativeness and being able or good at adapting and responding to frequent changes, or what the buzzword is, disruption, becomes very key, right? Because these two support speed. Anything that supports speed is going to do well for you and your business in the digital era. Anything that increases speed is going to help you. So innovativeness is doing it faster, doing it better. That helps with speed. Being good at adapting very quickly to a new environment whenever there's change and there's disruption is going to help you. So you will hear terms like agile environment, which is literally being able to adapt very quickly, and they gives you tools and methodologies to adapt quickly, right?
Right.
So, so in my opinion, there is no kind of new skills that is required, but you got to learn and you got to find how to balance the skills. So it's the priority and it's the ratio of the skills that's going to be different from the previous era and the digital era. So the person who can strike the right ratio will be the one leading or the winner in the race, right? Or there's no win, it's the infinite game, so you're leading, right? So to me, the priority should always be about the ratio between empowering and controlling, right? So if you learn as a leader to find the right ratio between empowering and controlling, that will help you, right? So which one adds to speed? Innovation in digital era, which one adds to speed? Empowering adds to speed. So when you empower people, decisions get faster and made, and you move real quick. Controlling slows things down, right? Because you need to check and you need to make sure that everything is okay, and then we move. So these two are at opposite ends. So you got to balance, because you want speed in the digital era, but you also don't want to get it wrong. So then you need to control. Then how much of a control and how much of a speed do I really balance it out? So in digital era, because it's speed influence so much, you need to have more balance in the empowering and less on the controlling. So for traditional businesses, you have to start to pivot and let go of controlling and start working at cultivating behaviors that is empowering. So, so how do you empower? How do you start cultivating? So two things I can share is you gotta be able to help people get you. They have to get you. As a leader, they must know what you want. So if they get you, you don't have to give instructions. So for leaders that like to give instructions and tell people how to do it exactly, you will slow down.
Right.
You will slow. So, and you won't get the competitive edge in the digital era. So you have to start turning your organization to one where it's empowering. Now, empowerment is not new. You've heard about this term like years ago, but it becomes critical. That's why the prioritization of the skill is different, not new, but the prioritization of the skills is different. So the first thing is you need to help your people get you.
Right.
And how do you do that? It's whatever that you've mentioned earlier, and you can read about this in the Google. People will tell you it's about communicating your vision, your purpose. What is it that you want? How do you envision the business to be, or that product to be, or that project to be? You got to be very good at helping people get what you have in your head, what vision you have through these kind of things. Once they get you, a lot of people then will move very quickly. I know what you want. Now I'll focus on how to get it for you, right? So they move to the second topic. So the second thing is how leaders help them with the how, because getting what you want is just first step. I know what you want, but I may not know how to do it well. So the second priority is really your ability to help that individual, that staff, that colleague with the how. So with the how, it's really about, it depends on your style and how. I'm not talking, and a lot of leaders or managers still do this. How is not about giving instructions. How is not about telling them, I want you to do it this way, this way. I want it like this. I want it like that. It's not that. You give them a high level purpose and you allow them to go and discover their how. You have to accept and be open that there are many ways to skin a cat, right? And when you empower them, when you allow them to go and try their thing, as long as the objective hits what you want, then you really have to let go. So that is so hard for people of the previous era, but it's absolutely necessary in the digital era. You cannot afford to control so much for the thing to come out perfect. Perfectionists like me, we struggle. If you're a perfectionist and all your life you want everything to come out perfect, you plan down to a T, you will struggle in the digital era. You've got to learn to let go and then trust your people by doing all this, making sure they get you, helping them with the how. So helping with the how, things like be their sounding board, listen to them and tell them what's your idea, whether the idea, maybe tweak a little bit, give a bit of guidance, that kind of thing. Put them in groups where they can work collaboratively and trust the team to be able to come up with brilliant ideas of the how, right? And then let them flow. You have no choice. You can't do everything yourself. You can't control. You have to trust and let them flow with it. And that's where the speed come in. So these are some of the requirements in terms of competency, skill sets, or critical behaviors that you talk about, that the leaders in the digital era or new era will need to adopt in order to survive in whatever that's coming.
Thanks,
so
Cheryl.
that answers your question. Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Cheryl. I think that's a very good point, to drive with purpose and goals and clarity, right?
Yeah.
I hope that Carol Tan that explains or answers your question too on some of the examples as well. I wanted to ask you then, with that empowerment given by leaders may get abused sometimes, right? So how would a leader be able to actually consider a good level of engagement, the balancing ratio that you're talking about, control versus empowerment? So how do you measure that level of engagement that a leader should give, to be considered a balance, a well-balanced engagement with their staff?
Sorry, you were asking about
how would we measure a good level of engagement, the right level? So control versus empowerment, right? Now we have no choice but to just empower more, trust them, and that creativity and innovation will come out from there as long as they meet the end goal, which is to meet the vision, right? So what kind of tools can we use to actually measure engagement then, a good level of engagement?
I don't think you need, okay, maybe a lot of HR is gonna hate me for this. But
share your thoughts, HR.
I'm one HR practitioner that does not or no longer believe in engagement surveys. Sorry for people who are in the business of engagement surveys. I hear what my people say, and I'm sure a lot of HR practitioners will agree. Making me fill up a questionnaire every year to tell you how engaged I am, that ain't gonna cut it, so people are, come on, right? So to me, that is, it's something organizations do in order to have a piece of paper or a report to prove to some top management that we're doing our job. Let's just be really frank, okay? That's HR. So I'm really frank with myself, and that's my opinion anyway. But you can beg to differ, but that's how I see it. But there has to be some form of measurement, and to me, a good level of measurement is not on a piece of paper or a report. It's really fairly simple. You just look around. You can feel it, and you know it whether that organization has a good level of engagement, right? And when I say good level, what do I mean? So if you look around, and on a out of 10 people, okay, just do this. Out of 10 people in your organization or team, if 8 of them or 7 of them, more than 5, okay, more than 50%, they have no qualms speaking up. They have no reservations telling you as a leader or telling management that I think you're wrong. I don't think that will work. So if a employee or majority of the employee speaks up, that's a good gauge. If they keep quiet and they just do whatever that you ask them to do, then you need to find out why. Why are they not speaking up? Is it because they're afraid to speak up? Is it because they're afraid to get it wrong and then there's repercussion? Is it afraid that they, will be judged, that they're not good enough by their boss? So all these are impediments to engagement.
Right.
So a good level of engagement, the fact that more than 50% of your staff dare to speak up when they see something wrong or they don't agree with you, shows two things. One, they trust you, right? So they trust you to be able to speak up and that you're not going to hurt them. Okay. Two, they care. They care enough about the company, they care enough about you to actually say something that in their opinion, they don't agree. So these two traits are really important for you to see whether your team, your staff, or the whole organization has a good level of engagement.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So that's a snapshot, and as opposed to an engagement survey.
Right. That's a good point. So here we go, leaders. It's our role here to actually provide a safe environment for our, our staff to actually perform their job. Yeah. So what then is your view about having diversity and inclusion in running a tech firm? Where do we of different generations actually come together, and what's the importance to have this, in a tech firm? Yeah.
Yeah, in a tech firm or any tech industry, the nature of tech is one word: global. No tech is being designed or built for one country or one region. It has to go across.
Okay.
So any business, not just tech, any business, if you're in the business of going global, then diversity and inclusion becomes very key. The more people to use it, subscribe it, download it, then the better it is. So if you want to operate globally, if you already are or you're going to operate, then you will need all the different cultures, different markets, different tastes and preference of the world to help you cater to that need. So you can't work from you can't get a Chinese to say that to develop something for a Spanish market. You won't know what their taste and preferences. You need to include someone from that region, not necessarily that country, but someone familiar with that environment in order to tailor fit your processes, your product. So who better than them? So you have to include a lot of diversity and inclusion in any businesses that wants to go global. And for tech, it's always global. Yeah.
Cool. So here's a question for both of you, right? With the statistics from the poll that we took, I think there were about 260 person who actually took part in that. 47% of them, nearly half of them are saying that it's so difficult to separate work and personal life. So how, as a leader, can we help navigate this issue faced by, our own people? Viren, do you want to go first in this?
I think it really depends on the organization and the way it's set up. I mean, I know there are some companies who, I guess it's because of the whole work from home situation that we're in. And, there are some people who, for lack of a better word, have nothing else to do at home. They're bored, and the only thing they typically will end up doing is, sitting on their computer. And you can't go out anywhere, right? So they don't take that additional time to go pursue other hobbies or activities. So then what happens, I feel at least, is then they start pinging other colleagues and start asking them like, hey, I need this, I need that. Can you help me with this? And then, of course, then it's like a vicious cycle, right? Then everyone starts getting pulled into this cycle that, oh, okay, I need to help him, or I need to help her. And you're not doing it intentionally. Sometimes it's unintentional, sometimes it's intentional, that like, oh, I need to do it. But so I think it's propagated from kind of top down, I would say. And that is why, you have a very clear message saying like, guys, you have to manage your own work hours. As long as you're delivering the tasks that you are responsible for, that's where you draw the line. Anything above and beyond, if you want to do it, it's your call, but you have to also then make a decision, where do you draw that line? Because if it's affecting your personal life or your personal relationships, you really then need to make that call. So unless it's something that, urgent, the house is burning down and you really need to go address it, which can happen, that's a separate matter altogether. But I think the more important thing is, self accountability. And, then again, it also goes back to people around you, and how they are managing their work-life balance. So I think that's where it's very subjective, and it's a very difficult subject, especially in the situation that we are in. But like I said, it all, I think, is propagated from kind of the management team. Like if they start kind of pounding the table and saying like, hey, you guys have nothing to do at home, you might as well come and do some work for me. Obviously, that's the wrong message, and then everyone gets pulled into that vicious cycle. But if everyone says like, look, after a certain hour, go take a break, because I think everyone needs a break. It doesn't matter if you, I don't know, just sitting and reading a book, but you need to pull yourself out of that day-to-day routine to kind of re-energize, refresh, come back with a fresh mind, right? If not, you face a burnout over time, and I think you'd face a higher rate of burnout. I think just working from home, because there's no change of scenery, no change of landscape, and so it's really, I think, critical to draw that line and just take a call. Like if it's a weekend, even if you're sitting at home, to just not look at work. And I mean, I have that personal policy, and I tell that to even the people in the team, like unless it's something extremely urgent where it can't wait, but beyond that, let's just look at it on Monday. I think, Monday to Friday is like people are working 10, 12 hours already. So, expecting more than that is just a bit too much. I think everyone needs a break. Everyone needs a refresh and a recharge.
Right. So basically knowing how to differentiate urgency and priority is very important in here.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right. How about Cheryl? What are your thoughts? Why do so many people actually face this situation that they don't know how to separate their work and personal life? And what kind of tips can you give them?
I'm one. So here's the thing, right? When you go to the office, there is naturally that
cut off time.
Yeah,
right?
You go in and then you drive there, and then when you drive back, psychologically, you know that it's closing time, right? It's time to shut the shop.
Right.
Of course, in today's time, even you drive back and at home, you don't totally shut, because I do still get texts, I still do get messages, I still do get pings, people asking quick questions, and then I reply immediately. That's normal. And before pandemic, we were already doing that, but it wasn't too, you don't really feel it, because in your mind, I'm close, but I choose to, give you that answer and all that, and we all respond. But when you work from home, then that in your head, that closure does not happen. So you don't really know when am I really stop working, right? So this is where it gets psychologically tiring, right? And you feel exhausted, right? So for me is, if that does not affect you and you're okay with this mode, fine, continue doing that, and go ahead. There's no really right or wrong. But if it's taking its toll and you feel that I am feeling tired, I'm feeling exhausted, then that discipline really needs to come in. Like what Viren said, you need to know where to draw the line. So it'd be good to have habits that you tell yourself what time I open and what time I close in your mind. And you do that by having a open activity and a closed activity. So in the past, your open and close is changing and driving, right, to
Yeah.
work, and then driving back from work to your home. That's your open and close. So you need to have a open and close psychologically when you're at home deliberately. So for example, you open, open is easy. So you dress up still, and then you hop onto the laptop. That's open. But how do you close? The closer is always the one that you get confused. So how do you close? So I would suggest you have a closing ceremony similar to like you driving home. So every time it hits 5, go for a jog, like 5-10 minutes, even or a walk, or make it a habit every 5 o'clock. Just go sit in the garden for 5 minutes and stare at the ants walking or something. Yeah, so that kind of tell your brain it's closing time. And when it's closing time, you just go like in the past. You still ping, you still message, but you're not full on sitting on the laptop, unless it's necessary and it's urgent work. And then, yeah, so you have no choice. Then if you have urgent work that day, then don't do the closing ritual, because then it doesn't, psychologically, it doesn't work. So that day you don't have a closing and you're working right until the end. But make sure the next day you stop and then you have that. So having habits like this helps psychologically behind. And try it, like, I don't know, different people have different closing.
What's yours, Cheryl, and what's yours, Viren? I know of a person who literally hop into a car, start the engine, and just sit at the porch, and that's the closing ceremony.
Exactly. So things like this, for me, I go for an evening walk, right? The fact that I'm dressing into my sports attire and walking out even for 15 minutes, I'm not really exercising, but just get out of the house and just walk. For those of you who even walking on your car porch round and round, it's okay. Your neighbors might think you're a bit cuckoo, but who cares, right? So yeah, things like that. It does help.
Viren, do you have one?
Well, I mean, typically for me, it's a bit difficult because I will still get messages, and that's something. It's part and parcel of the job, and it's not something I complain about. It happens. But then, yeah, I think what Cheryl said, right? Go out for a run, go out for a walk. I think at least we have those benefits in these times. That I think that's important, that you get out, get some fresh air, and that's something that it's a change of scenery, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's something very important, I believe, as part of kind of having some form of a balanced lifestyle.
Cool. So we have, thank you so much for your sharing. We have, now questions coming from the audience. One that was actually wrote in from Fui Hua Chan, a supply chain director from Simplot. She's asking, what are classical challenges that a corporate company has failed to understand how important digitalization it is, for employee. So I guess what she's trying to say is that, how do we actually bring awareness to the top management that moving into a digital mode is actually important, or having it as part of the strategy of the organization, which may be quite traditional. So what are your thoughts, Cheryl? Yeah, you have something to share here?
I think if you are you're the employee, and I mean, kudos to you for recognizing the importance of technology and the digital era coming, and how that's going to impact the business world, and also recognizing that in order to stay relevant in business, businesses have no choice but to somewhat, to a degree, participate in this space. But because they are top management, and if they don't already realize this, it will be difficult for you to tell them this. But that being said, while it's difficult, I still feel there are things that you can do as an employee. So it has to be subtle, and it takes time. So you need to feed them with information and teach them how to see this. So you got to open their eyes. And how do you open their eyes is where there are opportunities that you can open their eyes. An article, an event, you wrote them in. So send them, if you read something interesting on LinkedIn or, anywhere on Google that you find, text them with that link and have a conversation with them. Hey, did you read that? It was so interesting. And what do you think? How do you think our business? Do you think our business can, do that and engage with them? So you have to use this kind of skills, which technically is called upward managing upwards. Yeah. So you ought to use this kind of very subtle skills to hint, and at the same time your intention is to educate them so that they slowly open their mind and their eyes. The fact that if you don't evolve, there are lots of opportunities. So there's two. One is if you don't evolve, you're going to go down eventually. And the more attractive one to business is always there are a lot of opportunities that you can, and all these opportunities that have more money opportunities, they tend to, they tend to be quite interested. So how do you feed them things like this? So you can't force, you can only feed, and then you hope for the best. So that's all I think we can do. And the moment they open their eyes and the light bulb lights, that's when things get moving. Otherwise, it's gonna be tough. That's a challenging one. Yeah.
Thanks, Cheryl. So good luck, Fuhua, with this. Let's just try to subtly hint the management. Viren, would you like to take this? Are there any productivity monitoring or optimization tool for a remote workforce? This question came from Sasha. Thanks, Sasha, for the question.
Good question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for this. I personally don't know, because again, this whole remote workforce for me is, okay, I wouldn't say new, but it's something that has come onto. I've come onto it like over the past months. I don't, to be honest, I don't have an answer for this. Like we don't typically internally at TUI, we don't use any monitoring tools. There's just a lot of I think there's an embedded trust that everyone, you have your targets, you have your goals, you know what you are moving forward to, and those leaders who know what they need to drive that across with their teams as well. So yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anything in place or tools in place. So maybe Cheryl, I don't know if you have a better response to this.
Yeah, what do you practice in Imagine, or your leaders are practicing in Imagine?
The bulk of our people or the key business is really the tech guys. So the web developers and the full stack developers and system engineers. So in the tech industry, it's pretty tight. So if they use Scrum. So if you don't know this, do surf it up. It's a project management process to monitor progress of whatever app that they're developing. So they have this thing, for example, they have this thing called a stand-up meeting, right? Every morning, they will report. It's a 5 minutes meeting or to at most 15, really quick. Everyone standing in a room, or right now it's really in front of the monitor, just telling what I did yesterday and what I'm going to do today and what are the issues that I hit. That's it. So it's a quick report. So that's the IT space, right? But of course, in many other organizations that I've been with before, they don't do that. For me, when I first learned this, I was quite horrified to say, I have to report to you what I do every day. That's stressful. But yeah, so I do recognize and I do understand why the management have this perspective that work from home is not productive or not as productive. So a lot of bosses wants their people back into office so they can monitor them that they're there 9 to 5. I would say that that is something that the leadership need to learn to change, because this thing ain't gonna go away. Um, and they really, this is the part where I said earlier, they need to build processes and a culture where it's trusting, like what Viren say. You got to trust your staff to do what they want to, they do, they're doing their best, right? But then how do you monitor? So here you did ask about performance-based kind of thing. So you can borrow that concept where you have regular check-in. So you got to be quite disciplined. All your managers and leaders in the company need to be quite disciplined in terms of monitoring on a regular basis, not necessarily every day like us, but on a regular, maybe weekly basis in terms of what has been done, etc. And feed your boss outcomes. So literally, they don't have anything to grasp. You have to understand, as business owner, I don't have anything to grasp other than time spent in the office. That's the only measure I got. I see you physically here from 9 to 6. I know you're physically here, so you must be working. Okay, that's flawed, because I argue with them that I can be there 9 to 5, but I'm surfing internet. Do you know? You don't know. So I do argue with top management that thinking is flawed, but they don't have anything else to grasp. So I have to think of something to feed them so they feel, yeah, okay, it's not just hours, right? Time spent as a measurement. So we switch to outcome. So you have to feed them things like, this week, this is what we have achieved, this is what we have done. This week, this is what we've achieved, what we've done. Then they will not feel the, oh my God, my staff are taking advantage of me and they are, not working. They are lazing around on their beds at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. So that's the psyche. When they start getting to know that, oh, they can deliver this kind of thing within this time frame, then the change in them is really to trust the staff that this was done in the best capacity, because you don't have a choice. You have to trust them. I'm showing you 10 outcomes. Please don't ask me. Maybe in their office they can get 20. So don't be greedy. So top management need to understand this, and you need to do your part in telling them that they're doing their best already. So they have no choice. But these are the little things you can do to help alleviate your bosses or the owners' fear of, my staff are not, are taking advantage of me. So any feeling of either party taking advantage is a non-trusting environment, because you're suspicious.
Cool.
And that's not gonna work in this kind of environment. Yeah.
Cool. And then an interesting a statement made by Kiran, one of our audience here. I don't see that the digital era changes anything in terms of monitoring and productivity. That is deadline accuracy, quality and whatnot. So, but what you're trying to say here, Cheryl, is that the trust between the two parties is even more important to actually establish at the moment, right? Yeah. So, and Manish, thanks. You have a magic toolbox here session every morning that you use to keep everyone aligned and engaged as one team. That's great. Excellent work here. So guys, thank you so much again for your time. I think that we only have like 1 minute before we have to go off. And I truly actually enjoy this session very much, with all the learnings and sharings from the audience and from our amazing guest speaker. So before we go, just perhaps one exercise, just a takeaway from our session today. Let's try to put in our chat, what's the one start and one stop that you do for at least the next 1 week. Have that in mind. So what's yours? Please feel free to type in. One thing that you will stop and one thing that you will do for the next week to internalize and take and adopt whatever that, you know, Cheryl, Viren, and some of our amazing audience here has actually shared out. Yeah. So if you do not have a chance to basically put it here, never mind, think about it. Drop a note on my LinkedIn that I'll be posting up to share across. And thanks again, everybody, for investing in yourselves. And thanks, Cheryl and Viren. To those that we've not actually gotten to answer some of your questions, we make sure that we'll come back to you as well offline. So with that, bye, and
thank you so
see
much.
you next week. Yeah, thank you so much again.
Thank
All
you.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.